Hello guys, hello and welcome to this
I look at you and it's easy to see you are that someone I've been trying to meet.
hello guys and welcome to today's video. I'm very excited for this video because oh my god, looking back now, I'm so happy to see all the books I was able to read this year. My initial goal for this year was actually for me to read 20 books throughout this year. I'm not sure, but I think it's 20. I'm going to check the journal where I wrote my goal and I'm going to insert it on the script. But guess what, guys? I was able to read 52 whole books throughout this year. And I'm going to share all the books I read with you guys. I'm not going to go into the synopsis of all the books I read because I've done that in my previous monthly wrap-up videos throughout the year. If you want to see what the books are about and all that, you can go to those videos and check them out and you'll see what they are about. Now I am going to rapidly go through all the books I have read and I'll tell you my ratings for each book so that if you feel you want to read it, at least that's enough information for you to pick it up and read. And if you want to get more information with regards to those books, you can go to my previous monthly wrap-up videos since I'm going to tell you which month I read each of those books. So let's get started with some of the books I actually don't have a physical copy of them, but I'm going to insert a picture of it on the screen so that you see them. The ones that I don't have the physical copy of them. The book, the month of January, I read a total of 4 books, and these are the books I read. I read The Road Lawyer by John Grisham. As you know, John Grisham is my person. I love to read his book, and I read this book and I rated it 4-star. It was a nice book. It was a great book. I rated it a 4-star. Then after that, I read The Rooster Bar. I don't have a physical copy of it, but I'm going to insert a picture of it so that you will see. I rated The Rooster Bar a 5-star read. I actually borrowed it to one of my friends to read it and he has not returned it. So it's a very nice book. I rated it a 5-star. Then after that, I read The Racketer. This book is amazing. It is so amazing and interesting. I rated it 4.5 star. It's an amazing book. It is also by John Grisham. As you can see, January was all about Grisham. And then I read this book. It's non-fiction. Your strategy needs a strategy. Honestly, how to choose and execute the right approach. It's a business-like kind of book, and I needed to read something of that nature that time, so I read this one. It's a nice book and I rated it a 4-star. In fact, I even recommended this book even on my Instagram. That's all the book I read in the month of January, and then for February I read a total of 3 books. So in the month of February I read this book, Deep Harbor. This is a series. I don't know the name of the series, but this is the second book in the series, and I didn't know it is the second book until when I started reading it. And I've been looking for the first and the second book. Honestly, I didn't really look properly, but I'm going to get the first and the third book to read it. It is a very interesting book. Even though I just read the second book, but I rated the second book a 5-star. It is a very interesting book. You can read it all alone, but it's a series and the storyline continues. But even reading just this, you feel some kind of satisfaction. So I rated this 5-star. Then I read Marriage, Divorce and Remarriage. This is a Christian book. I felt the topic was interesting and I read it. It talks about marriage, remarriage and divorce under the Christian law, the Christian perspective of it. It's a nice book and I rated it a 4-star. So it's a good book. Then I read Americana by Chimamanda Adichie. Chimamanda is one of the authors I love, but unfortunately this book falls short of my expectation. Like, I had high hopes for this book because it's been hyped everywhere, and I read it and I was not too impressed. I gave it a 3-star. It's a nice book, but I give it a 3-star. Then in the month of March I read 5 books. No, I read 5 books. I read A Sure Foundation. This is also another Christian book, building your life on the unshakable truth of God's word. It's a nice book and I enjoyed every bit of it. After that, I read The Reckoning. I will pop a picture here. I don't have a copy. I actually gave someone my copy of The Reckoning because it's that good. I ordered for the person, but he couldn't get it when I was going to give him the books I got for him, so I gave him my own copy instead, and I'm waiting for another copy of it to arrive because I'm going to read that book every year. It's that good. So I read The Reckoning. I rated The Reckoning a 5-star. This book I rated it a 3-star. I rated The Reckoning a 5-star. And then I read Notes on Grief by Chimamanda Adichie. This is a short story about grief, the loss of her father and all that. And this book is an amazing book. I rated it a 4-star. It's a nice book. Then I read The Guardian by John Grisham. The Guardian by John Grisham is a good book. I rated it a 4.5 star. It's a great book. And then while I read Becoming by Michelle Obama, it's a memoir, and this book is amazing. It is just super cool, and I rated it a 4.5 star. Then in the month of April, it was during Ramadan period, and if you know, Ramadan period is the spiritual month in the Islamic calendar where we do the 30 days Ramadan fast. So I read Islamic books all through, and these are the books I read. I read 4 books. I read Inheritance, Revelation, and Expectation. I read this. It's actually a series, and this is the second book in the series. This is the 5th book, Life in Al-Barzakh, but you can read every one of them independently. Like, you don't have to read them together. So I have just these 2 copies, and I read the 2 of them during the month of Ramadan. That was April. And then I read this book, The Desired Muslim Generation. I read those 2 books I showed you, a 5 star. Then The Desired Muslim Generation, I rated it a 3 star. It's a nice book, it's just a normal simple book. Then I read the Prophet Prayers Described. This book is amazing, and it is detailed, and it is simple, and I rated it a 5 star. It's a great book. In fact, I wrote a review of it on my Instagram. I think it's a nice book. So that was what I read in the month of April. Then in the month of May, I read 4 books. You know, after Ramadan fast, you still need to fast 6 months in the month of Shawwal, which was the following month after Ramadan, and that was May. So while I was doing my 6 fasting, I still continued reading my Islamic book. So I read this book, Islamic Fatwa Regarding Women. I read it in the month of May, and it is amazing, and I read this book of 5 star. It's an amazing book. If you are a woman and a Muslim, please just read it. Or even if you are not a Muslim, you want to know rules and regulations regarding women, you can pick it up and read, because there is a lot of misconception in the world now about regarding Islam. Then I read this book, I Am Because We Are. It's about Dora Akunyili. This woman is my role model. I freaking love her. Even while I was young, like, I didn't know anything, but I just love the woman. And this is her life story, written by her daughter Chidiogo Akunyili Pa. So I picked it up, but the story actually is like a memoir too, because it was narrated as if it was Dora Akunyili narrating it herself. I cried while reading this book, and I enjoyed every bit of it, and I rated it a 4.5 star. Then this is one of my favorite book of the year, favorite book of all times. In fact, this book, I'm going to give it a 6 star out of, like, giving it The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I read this book in the month of May, and it is like simply amazing. I rated it a 5 star. Then I read The Evidence Against You. This is an amazing book too. 17 years ago, your father killed your mother. Now he's out of prison and says he's innocent. It's a very nice book. It's an amazing book, and I rated it a 4 star. So that starts with that. Then in the month of June, I read 5 books. I read this book, The Conclave by Robert Harris. This is a book about the Catholic Church and its politics and all that. It is an interesting book, and I rated it a 5 star. Then I read Daughters Who Walked This Path. No, I rated The Conclave a 4 star or 3.5 star. Yes. Then I read Daughters Who Walked This Path. Amazing book. It deals with issue of rape, so if that's a trigger to you, don't read it. But it's an amazing book, and I rated it a 5 star. It's by Yejide Kinanko. This is a Nigerian author, and I love this book. Then I read the Divergence series. Yes, I read the Divergence series. Divergence series is Divergence is the first book. Divergent, it's actually like this. Yes, Divergent is the first book, Insurgence, then Allegiance. This is an amazing series, and I rated all of them a 5 star. All of them. In fact, I tried in this last one, and then I watched the movie. The movie is also interesting, but it's nothing like these books. We all know that books are better. So I read that in the month of June. Then in the month of July, I actually traveled to my sister's place in Kaduna, so I didn't read a lot of books, but I read 3 books. I read The Secret Keeper by Kate Morton. Very nice book, historical romance, and I rated it a 4 star. It is an amazing book, so I read this. Then I read Kiss Carlo by Adriana Trigini. This is also a historical romance, very nice book, an amazing book, and I rated it a 3.5 star. Then I read this book, Talking to the Dead. This is actually a series. It comprises of 5 books. This is the first book, and I have the 3rd book. So I'm waiting to get the 2nd book and the 4th and the 5th before I continue reading the series. So this is an amazing book, and I rated it a 5 star. Yes. Then in the month of August, I read don't mind me. In the month of August, I read this series, The Child Called It series. It is actually a non-fiction. Can you just take it, please? It is actually a non-fiction. The first book is The Child Called It. Then the second book is The Lost Boy, and then the 3rd book is A Man Named Dave. Very amazing book. I rated all of them a 5 star. Amazing book. So pick them up and read. Then I read The Villain's Daughter by Roberta Cray. Amazing book. I rate this book a 5 star. It's an amazing book. Then Helen Coben, Home. This book is amazing. In fact, I even told my book vendor to get me any Harlan Coben book because this was just amazing. And she gave me this book as a gift because she knows I love crime books. So, like, this is just nice. I rated it a 5-star. Then in September, I read these 3 books. These 3 books, I read them in September. I read When Shadow Falls by Alex Gray in September. This is an amazing book, and I rated it a 3.5-star. Then Nearly All the Men in Lagos Are Mad. This is an amazing book by Damilare Koko. She's a Nigerian author and an actress. This is a nice book. I rated it a 5-star. So just pick it up and read. This is an interesting book. And then I read Confidence and Killing It by Tiwalola Ogunsi. This is a self-help book, and I liked it. It is nice. It is amazing. You can pick it up and read. There are a lot of information. I think I'm going to rate this book a 3.5-star. My previous rating was more than this, but now after reading other self-help books that were written before this, now I'm going to rate this 3.5-star. Then in the month of October, I was in Kaduna because my mom and my sisters traveled to Saudi Arabia. So I actually traveled with some of my books, so I didn't read them. I read just 2 among my books, and then other books I read were my brother's books, my brother-in-law's books. So I'm going to insert picture of them, and if you want to see the full review of those books, you can go to my October wrap-up and you'll see them. The first book I read was The Psychology of Persuasion. I'll insert a copy of it on the screen and you'll see it. It's a nice book. I read How to Speak in Public. It's also a nice book. Sorry if I'm looking down because I'm actually looking at the titles I read here because I wrote them down. Then I read Take the Risk by Ben Carson, also another amazing book. Then I read Ways of Showing Love to Your Husband, another amazing book. Then I read Love in Color. This is another Nigerian author book by Bolu Babalola. It's an interesting book. It's a collection of short stories, and it is just amazing. I rated this a 5-star, so it's an amazing book. Then I read I actually bought this book because of its cover, and it's after buying I discovered that it's a series, and this is the first book in the series. But honestly, I didn't like this book. I almost DNF'd it, but I read it anyways because I felt it was just unnecessarily long and lengthy, and it is too young adults for me. So I rated this book a 2-star. So I don't even think I'm not even going to pick up the rest of the book in the series I read. So I rated it a 2-star. Then in the month of November, I read some pretty amazing books. I read 5 books. I read A Commonplace Killing by Sharon Bosby. This is a crime book, and the author is dead, but she actually died shortly after finishing writing this book, and I think her husband even published it. I read this book and I rated it a 4-star. It's a nice book. Then I read this book, Blindfold by Linda Lapanti. Very amazing book. If I can give this book a 6-star, I would have given it a 6-star. But I rated it a 5-star. It's an amazing book. Crime. It's about crime. It's nice. It's a female heroine. So if you like that, you like this book. Then I read Reminders of Him. I cried my eyes out in this book by Colin Hoover. Amazing book, and I rated it a 5-star. Then I read The Alchemist. This book was I feel it was just overhyped, and I didn't really enjoy it, so I rated it a 3-star. Then I read Wonder. Very nice, young, fresh, and emotional book. I'm going to make my niece and nephew read this book as soon as they hit 10 years old or 11. I'm going to make them read this book, and I read this book a 5-star. Month of December, I read some pretty amazing books. I read this book, Atomic Habits, because I actually felt there's no better time to read this book than December, while you're preparing for the new year and looking to see things you need to do in your life to improve your life. So I read it. It is an amazing book by James Clear. It's a nice book, really informative. I really enjoyed and liked the approach in which the author gave in this book when you're looking to build new habits and to break new habits. It's not all those unrealistic, do this, move as if it's easy to just do those things. It's not easy to do those things. So I love the approach, and this is one of my top self-help book. I'm going to do a video regarding those things. So I love this book. I rate it a 5-star. I read this book. Then I read Yinka, Where's Your Husband? It's a book by a Nigerian author, Lizzie Damilola Blackburn, and I rated this book a 5-star. You need to look at my December wrap-up and see why. This is a nice book. Then I read Aristotle is Back. Amazing book. When the St. Jenkins read Ever Disappoint Us. I love the book, and I rated it 4.75 star. There's a reason why I didn't give it a 5 star. You should see that in my December wrap up. Then I read the Wheat Flour by John Grisham. I don't have the cover of the back, but like I read this, and it's also an amazing book, and I rated it like I would rate this book a 4.5 star because it's not the 5 star of John Grisham for me, but it was still amazing. 4.5 star is a very, very high rating. So the last book I'm reading, because it's still not December and I'm not done with this book, it's December 30th and I will basically be done with it today. Like, so that's, and I know this is the last book I'm going to read for the year. It's Unfuck Yourself. It's an amazing book. It's a self-help book, and I totally love and enjoy the approach. I've read a lot of self-help books, but you see, these Atomic Habits, I love the way they approach the whole issue, because everybody be picking interest in writing self-help books, and those are very, very sensitive things to write about. But this Atomic Habits, I love what they do with the topic. So I would rate this, even though I'm not sure, but I know what my rating is going to be for this book. So I'm going to rate it a 5 star. Honestly, it's an amazing book. Those are all the 52 books I read in the year 2022, guys. I hope you'll be inspired to pick up some of these books that I've read, looking at my recommendations and all that. I am hoping to have a wonderful reading year in 2023, even though honestly, I don't think I'm going to read as much books as I have this year, because I know next year is going to be good for me with work. I am hoping that, but regardless, I enjoyed all of the books I read. Thank you guys so much for sticking around with me and watching this video. I love to make this kind of book videos. They give me so much joy just going back and looking at them. I hope you enjoy them, and I hope you would subscribe to my channel so that you come back and see other videos that I'm going to be making next year. I love you guys so much. Goodbye.